This is part 3 of our lesson on horizontal and vertical lines. So in our previous 2 videos, we looked at a horizontal line and a vertical line. We looked at their slopes and their equations and what they looked like. So we're just going to use this space here to kind of summarize what it is that we learned. So a horizontal line is one that goes from left to right, and it should be parallel with your x-axis. So I'm just going to draw in a rough sketch of a horizontal line. Now, horizontal lines, the one that we did our experiment with, we learned had a slope of 0. It's a flat line. It's not moving up or down. So our slope worked out to be 0. And our equation we discovered when we did y equals mx plus b, because the slope is 0, it canceled out the x part, and we just ended up with y equals, and then wherever your y-intercept is. So this is going to be y equals, and I could write y equals b, but I'm going to write y equals, and then I'm going to use a number sign, not a hashtag, it's a number sign, but a number sign there to say that y just equals a number. So it might be y equals 5, or y equals -2, or y equals something. Vertical lines are lines that go up and down. They are parallel to the y-axis. Now, the slope of these lines, because they're going up and down, but they don't move over, we end up dividing by 0, which means the slope is one of two things. You can either write the word undefined, or you could say that it is infinite or infinity. Now, sometimes I like to use infinity because it's less writing than the word undefined, but for the most part, when you're doing practice questions, you're always going to run into the word undefined. Equation for this one, you can't use y equals mx plus b for vertical lines because their slopes are undefined and they don't cross the y-axis. So their equation is actually just x equals, and then a number, which actually is the x-intercept. Okay, so we're going to go through 8 different examples, and we're going to see if we can come up with what their slope, their equation, and whether they are horizontal or vertical. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I will say before we start, the key to doing any of this really is just a graph. The graphs make all the difference. If I can see what the line looks like, it makes it so much easier for us to figure out what this is. So for the first one, it just says, see the graph below, which is this. Is this horizontal or vertical? Well, it's going from left to right, so it is horizontal. Now for the slope, I could calculate the slope, but I don't really need to because the slope of a horizontal line is always 0 every time. And then the equation. So we said the equation is going to be y equals a number, more specifically y equals where it's crossing the y-axis. So if I take a look at this line, I see that it's crossing the y-axis at 2. Now, this is just how it works in my brain, and everybody's brain is different. But when I look at horizontal and vertical lines, I see that this crosses the y-axis at 2. So I know that it's crossing the y-axis, which means it's going to be y equals, and it's crossing it at 2, so I know it's y equals 2. So you're going to see me repeat that for all the other ones. That's kind of how I figure it out. All right, what about the next one? This one is definitely vertical. It is going up and down. Vertical lines have slopes that are undefined or infinity. And the equation for this one, this does not cross through the y-axis. This one crosses through the x-axis. So it should be x equals, and it is crossing the x-axis at -1. So that's going to be x equals -1. Okay, we're going to try the next one. It says a line that passes through the points 9, 2, and 3, 2. So there is no scale on here. This is just for a rough sketch. So 9 should be maybe somewhere out here, and maybe 2 is like there. So I'm going to say there's 9 and 2. and then maybe this would be 3 and 2. So if I connect those with a line, what kind of line is that? That is definitely horizontal. Now, there was a clue to me that this is a horizontal line. If you look at the points, they had the exact same y value. So that's kind of how you would know that it was horizontal. So what is its slope? Horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. And the equation, this is crossing through the y-axis. So I know it's going to be y equals. And it's crossing through the y-axis at 2. So it's going to be y equals 2. You'll also notice they both have y values of 2 in their points. So that's also how I would know that it was going to be y equals 2. All right, let's try our next one. A line that passes through the points 4, 7, and 4, negative 3. So once again, there's no grid, so I'm just going to estimate where I think these are. So there's 4, 7, and then 4, negative 3 would be somewhere down here. Which means this is a vertical line. Okay, slopes of vertical lines are undefined or infinity. And my equation, well, I noticed that it crosses through the x-axis at 4. So it's going to be x equals 4. I also would notice that because they both have an x value of 4 in both points. Okay, let's try our next row. It says a vertical line that passes through the point 10 and 0. So 10 and then 0 means it didn't go up or down, so that's just that. And it's vertical. Vertical is up and down. So it would look a little something like that. Is this horizontal or vertical? Well, it told me in the question it was vertical. And the slope of any vertical line is undefined. You could also write infinity. And then what's the equation of that line? Well, the line is crossing through the x-axis. So I'm going to write x equals. And then it is crossing through the x-axis at 10. So I'm going to write x equals 10. So anytime I do one of these questions, I always draw a picture first so that I can see what it looks like. And then I decide what the equation is from there. I always had trouble when I was in grade 9 remembering what I was supposed to do for each one, but I find if I draw myself a picture, it makes it so much easier for me to do. All right, a horizontal line that passes through the point at 8, negative 9. So let's say this is 8. This would maybe be negative 9. There's the point. And this time it says it's horizontal, which means it goes from left to right. That would be this way. So this is a horizontal line. They told me that in the question. Slope of a horizontal line is always 0. And then from here, my equation is going through the y-axis, so y equals, and then it's crossing at negative 9. So y equals negative 9. All right, we've got 2 more to go. This one says a line parallel to the x-axis that passes through 5 and 3. So 5 and 3, maybe right there. Now, parallel to the x-axis. Parallel means they have the same slope, so they should be evenly spaced and not cross. So if it's parallel to the x-axis, it should look like this, which makes it a horizontal line. So slope of my horizontal line is 0. I always think of it, if you want to think of it this way, that the line is like lying down. It's taking a nap. It's very lazy. What's the laziest number? 0. And then it is crossing through the y-axis. So it's going to be y equals, and it's crossing at 3. So y equals 3. Okay, and then our last one here says a line parallel to the y-axis that passes through -6, -1. So this would be -6. This would be maybe -1. There's my point. And then it's parallel to the y-axis. So it should be evenly spaced, pointing in the same direction as the y-axis, which would be there, which makes it vertical. And then if you want to think about vertical lines, I think about Buzz Lightyear, and he would stick his arm up in the air and he would say, "To infinity and beyond," and he points up. So because this is going straight up, it is going to infinity and beyond. So you could write infinity, or we can write undefined. Okay, so because it's crossing through my x-axis, it's going to be x equals, and it's crossing at -6, so it's x equals -6. And that's what you need to know today about horizontal and vertical lines. It's now your turn to go do some practice.